colleagues. Welcome. First item is the declaration of, now before I go there, sorry, Andrew, apologies and substitutes. Can you let the committee know?
Yes, convener. So an apology for Councillor Logue being substituted by Councillor Quigley, and then apologies from Councillors Morgan and Shields, although Councillor Shields may attend later if he's able.
Who may attend later?
Councillor Bill Shields.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Moving on.
Chair, can I put apologies in for Councillor Curry, please?
Not a problem. Thank you very much. Any other apologies from anybody else? I should have said that. No. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 1, declaration of interests. Members, is there any declaration from anyone? I don't see anything coming in. Okay, thank you for that. Agenda item 2 is...
Sorry, Bob.
Sorry.
Apologies for not coming in the chat bar. It's Councillor Paul DeMaster here. Can I declare an interest in agenda item, excuse me, I think it's 14.
14, rough management properties.
Yes, as a director.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that.
Sorry, Councillor DeMaster, can I just check, are you going to be staying in the meeting or will you want to leave the meeting during that item?
I'll stay in the meeting, so that's okay.
Chair, can I also declare an interest in that agenda item, please? It's Councillor Lennon.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, agenda item 2 is the minute of the Joint Consultative Committee of the JICC. It's on pages 7 to 9. It's here for your approval. Is there any questions, members, to the paper? No. No, thank you for that. Agenda item 3 on pages 11 to 16. That's a report from about the bank holiday 2022. It's actually a positive report on that. Fiona, you want to say a few words on it?
Thank you, Convener. I will. So members will be aware that the UK Government is proposing to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee next year through the creation of a 4-day holiday weekend in June. And the Scottish Government has now confirmed that it will follow that approach in Scotland. So it's proposed at the moment that that 4-day holiday weekend will be created by moving the late May bank holiday on the 30th of May to the 2nd of June, and then awarding an additional day's leave on the 3rd of June to create that 4-day run, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for employees. Given that it's the sole decision of the Council as an employer as to how additional holidays which are granted by the Scottish Government should be classified and applied locally, the Council is therefore now required to consider and approve our own approach to celebrating the Platinum Jubilee, and our proposal is set out in the remainder of the report for your consideration. So allow you to fully consider and approve the proposed approach. I'm just going to summarise the main points which are set out in 2.3.1 of the report rather than go into any other detail. So if I start with 2.3.1, in line with previous Jubilee celebrations, it's proposed that that additional day's leave, which is basically the 3rd of June, that is awarded as a bank holiday in the form of a bank holiday. And the reason we are proposing that decision is that it will allow the Council to close on that day, that's Friday the 3rd of June, except for services that would normally operate during a bank holiday. That approach recognises that most services that will be operational during that period of the bank holiday on the Friday will be frontline services, and those employees will benefit from the enhanced rate which is applied to the bank holiday. And this enables the Council to offer that additional benefit to staff who may be unable or probably will be unable to take advantage of the extra holiday and who would have worked tirelessly during the pandemic to deliver our most critical services. If I move to section 2.3.3, it's important for members to note that schools will be closed as normal on Friday the 27th of May as part of the normally late May bank holiday, and then again on Thursday the 2nd of June, and then the additional day on Friday the 3rd of June 2022. In terms of 2.3.4, other than teaching staff who already have the late May Monday as a bank holiday, their bank holiday then will be moved, the additional bank holiday they normally get will be moved to Thursday the 2nd of June. However, single status employees who wish to take the 2nd of June, not the 3rd as a bank holiday, the 2nd of June, will need to use an additional day's leave from their current annual leave entitlement to allow for that 4-day weekend. So I just want to make sure you're clear about the difference between single status employees and teaching staff. If I move then to section 2.3.4, where possible, to allow staff who fall into that category to take the 4-day bank holiday, we will be encouraging managers to approve requests for that leave on the Thursday the 2nd of June. And the council will close, as I said, on Friday the 3rd of June, except for essential service operation. Once the council's position has been approved by the committee, appropriate communications will be issued to staff, parents and the local community, and the school holidays for session 21-22 will be updated accordingly. Just want to make another couple of final points. That is that the trade unions are fully supportive of that proposal to award the 3rd of June as a bank holiday. And as I said, that is due to the benefits this offers those members who may have to work on that day. So that's the best possible outcome as far as the trade unions are concerned in terms of our approach to this. You'll also note that in section 4.1 that there is a cost to the council of around 450,000 from this proposal, and this will be covered through the council's change management fund. So just finally then, the committee is asked to note the UK Government and Scottish Government's arrangements to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, to note that the statutory schooling days for pupils in North Lanarkshire Council will be reduced to 189 from 190 days in 2022. Now, the paper says, following receipt of an exemption from the Scottish Government, I'm pleased to confirm that we already now are in receipt of that exemption from the Scottish Government, so we have the green light to move forward in that regard. Finally then, we are seeking approval to move the late May bank holiday to the 2nd of June and award that additional bank holiday for all employees on the 3rd of June. And we're seeking your approval to close the council on Friday the 3rd of June, except for services that would normally operate during a bank holiday. So I'll stop at that point and take any questions. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you for that detailed response. Excuse me, Fiona. I'm looking at the chat bar and there's no requests have come in. The approval is sought under recommendations on page 12 that Fiona has just went through. Are you happy to approve the recommendations? Yes, I'm getting the nod on that. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 4 on pages 17 to 26. This is an annual report and it's here for noting. It's a statistical report, as you can see. Actually, Aiken, do you want to say a few words on the report?
Thanks, Convener. Yes, as you say, it's the annual update on freedom of information requests. I think the report speaks for itself, Convener. I would just point out that shortly after lockdown last year, on the 7th of April, the Scottish Parliament passed legislation which moved the turnaround time for freedom of information requests from 20 days to 60 days, which was very helpful in terms of staff adjusting to home working. Unfortunately, that was revoked excuse me, on the 27th of May, reverting back to the 20-day turnaround period. So you'll see at paragraph 2.9 in terms of performance that in Q1 it was a bit lower than it would normally be at 88.9%. But we recovered, and when I say we, it's not just my services FOI team, but across the council, the staff that we rely upon to pass information to us. And overall, I have to say, I think compliance in the circumstances is commendable and compares favourably with previous years. I'm happy to take any questions, Convener.
Thank you, Archie. Thank you very much. chat bar, there is no requests coming in. So I'm seeking your approval for noting the recommendations on page 17. Are you happy to agree those recommendations? Yeah. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, another annual report, pages 27 to 30. Again, I think it's quite a positive report. I can actually take any questions from the members. Does any members get any questions on this item? Nothing in the chat bar. Okay. Can you agree the recommendations that's on page 27? Yes. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 6 is the pandemic payments. Just to say to you, I should have said this at the start of the meeting. Elaine Kemp normally would be here, but Elaine is unwell, and we've got 2 members of the finance team are here today, Greg and Kathleen. So Greg, we're on page 31. Do you want to make a few comments about the pandemic payments?
Yeah, thanks, Convener, and morning, everyone. So this report is highlighting the financial support payments that the Council's been asked to provide to individuals and families on behalf of the Scottish Government. And in the report, we're recognising the efforts of the Financial Solutions team to quickly set up mechanisms for each of these payments, and their close working with staff and business solutions to ensure that applications forms are available online to speed up processing. I think it's worthwhile highlighting that all these payments and all these payment runs were in addition to normal business activity for the service, and that required individual team members to work flexibly and within tight timescales to ensure that payments were made as quickly as possible to those in need in our communities. So the report highlights the range of different payments that have been made throughout the year and are likely to be made next financial year as well. And in Appendix 1, we're highlighting that those total £21 million are anticipated to total £21 million. And there's just a couple that I'd like to highlight just for information. So the low income pandemic payment, that's a payment made to households in receipt of council tax reduction. And within North Lanarkshire, we've got 39,000 eligible households. And to date, we've made nearly 38,700. That difference that we've got there of around 300 is actually people that we can't actually trace. So they were eligible for council tax reduction in April, so they were eligible for the payment, but they've maybe moved on and we've not got a forwarding address. So if they do come back to North Lanarkshire and become a council tax payer again, we'll keep a note of that and make sure that these people can get a payment. Another one that I just wish to highlight was just the Scottish Child Payment bridging payments. So you'll all be aware that the Scottish Government has started making the Scottish Child Payment to children under the age of 6. But the Scottish Government's not yet set up to do that for older children and young people. So they have asked local government through the mechanisms that we've got in place already for supporting family pandemic payments to support those payments to older children and families. And those will be done in as a top-up to the family pandemic payments in accordance with the schedule that we've highlighted in paragraph 2.6.1. But otherwise, the report's there for noting and for information. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Greg, for that. Thank you for detailing some of the items on the report. We're on agenda item 6, and I don't see any comments, questions coming in on the chat bar. So the recommendations are on page 31. There's 3 of them. Are you happy to agree the report? Yes, I'm getting the nod and the thumbs up. Thank you for that. Agenda item 7 is a review of financial regulations on page 39 to 80. Colleagues, there's a fair degree of report here, about 40 pages. But I need to say, having looked through it like yourselves, you will note that very, very little has changed. Very little indeed, in fact, and a lot of paperwork, but to say not a lot. So I think what I would do, I would take any questions from elected members, if there is any, from pages 39 to 80. I'm looking at the chat bar here. I don't see anything coming in on agenda item 7. The recommendations, members, are on page 39. Are you happy to agree with that? Yes, yeah, the nods there, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8, on pages 81 to 86, it's the payment of local taxation. And again, Greg, it's back to you, thank you.
Yep, thanks, Convener. So this is our quarterly report that we bring to every committee to provide an update to the committee on the payment performance of the council's local taxes and the administration of benefits. Given that it's a sort of report for noting and it's a sort of standard report that we bring every committee, I'll just highlight some of the key areas. So today, for council tax collection, we've improved our performance from the same period last financial year, but our performance has dipped slightly from the equivalent pre-pandemic financial year in 2019-20. For non-domestic rates, our collection is actually up 2.7% from the previous year. And for housing benefits, the service continues to improve processing times for new benefit claims. Last year we were at 16 days to process a new claim. In the current financial year, we're at 13 days, which is below the Scottish average. For the Scottish Welfare Fund, we continue to be assessing applications at our medium priority level. And that means at the moment we've around about 74% of our crisis grant applications have been successful, and 83% of community grant applications are successful. It's also worth noting that in the current year, the budget includes a significant carry forward of funding from last financial year, and that was allowed by the Scottish Government given the pandemic. And at this stage in the financial year, around 57% of the total funding available has been utilised in making crisis grant and community grant applications to individuals. And it's also worth noting that expenditure tends to be skewed towards the latter part of the financial year, around about Christmas and New Year. So that 57% is not unexpected at this stage. And lastly, just to highlight the self-isolation support grants that are continuing to be paid out, and the number of applications, thankfully, has reduced from around a peak of around 300 per week. We're now sitting at around about 100 per week and reducing given the change in the criteria announced by the Scottish Government. So today, in the current financial year, we've made nearly 1,900 awards, totaling around about £900,000. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Greg, again for that. An important item on the agenda, colleagues. I don't see anybody in the chat bar. The recommendations are on page 81 for noting. Are you happy to agree those? Yeah, yeah. Moving on to agenda item 9, pages 87 to 104. This is a procurement strategy 22-23. And I think it's important to say, members, that it is a strategy paper, and that's, I think, very important. James, do you want to say a few words on it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Convener. Similar to the previous paper you had in your agenda about the financial regulations and the scheme of delegation, this is a review of our procurement strategy, and we carry out that review on an annual basis. And you'll be aware as well that we also bring an annual procurement plan to this committee, and we brought that report to the last meeting of the committee. So the updated strategy that covers next financial year, because our current strategy ends at the end of this financial year. The review has basically confirmed that the principles and the policies that we have in place in the council are still valid going forward, and they align with kind of national procurement policies, etc. There's been some very small kind of changes to the strategy itself. So obviously, you know, since the last strategy came to committee, Brexit has happened, so we've updated the strategy in recognition of that, and we've also recognised within the strategy that the pandemic, and you'll see in page 92, paragraph 1.7 of the strategy, that we continue to work closely with all of our supply chain just to make sure that council services and council projects can continue to be delivered as we go forward. And the only other thing I want to just highlight to committee is paragraph 2.8. You're aware that we get an independent assessment of our procurement capability carried out within the council. We would expect that independent assessment, the next version of that will probably take place in the lifetime of this new updated strategy. So that's something that we continue to plan for as we go forward.
Thank you, James, for that. I've got one councillor, Councillor Hume. Jim, you want to come in, Jim?
Thanks, Chair. James, 2.8 that you mentioned there, the independent assessment, very briefly, could you explain what format that takes and how they're able to assess it and come up with the percentage figures that they have done over the years?
It's an independent assessment which is carried out by Scotland Excel, and it's an assessment that's carried out by across the 32 local authorities. So how it's normally carried out is it's a bit like an audit in many respects. Is they'll come in and they'll spend some time within the council, and there's a series of kind of programme that they have. They'll meet officers from the central procurement team. They'll meet myself. They'll meet with officers from council services as well, going through that process. You'll be aware as well that part of our own improvement strategy is I meet with the chief executive of Scotland Excel on a quarterly basis, and that's to cover strategic procurement issues at kind of national level, etc. For example, during the pandemic, that was an important thing for us to be doing to make sure that we could access contracts for PPP equipment, etc. type of thing. So that's how this assessment is normally done during the pandemic. Obviously, all the kind of face-to-face contact has been curtailed, and so from the Scotland Excel end, they've kind of reprioritised their work. So they've been focusing on other things like PPE. Obviously, you'll be aware of all the challenges that exist in the construction industry, procurement in that area, and what that's resulted is Psip assessments probably been pushed out across the board. But I would expect that programme of work from their end would start to pick up some point next calendar year, and certainly next financial year. The Psip assessment itself, it covers 10 themes. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what all the themes are to rattle them off to you, but it covers things like leadership and governance, etc. And it goes down to level of detail about the processes that we have in place, and we actually get a score for each of these 10 themes, and that's brought together and gives us a score. But what we do with the Psip assessment when that's carried out, we always bring a report to committee, and it covers those 10 themes.
Thank you, James, for that. That was quite a comprehensive response, Jim, for yourself. I hope that's been helpful. Another question has come in from Councillor Goldie. Willie?
Thanks, Convener. It's probably maybe asking James to look into a crystal ball here. It's just to see whether there is concerns over future procurement because of issues such as increased costs of materials, difficulties in obtaining vehicles and whatever. If he anticipates that's going to continue long term, and if we're possibly going to have a look at into the future to see if procurement's going to change. I know certainly other companies have approached me and said they've got real difficulties just now, and they don't anticipate an end to this in the short term.
Okay, James.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and the answer to that is yes. In terms of we are aware of all of these issues. There's broadly kind of 4 issues that's impacting on everything that we're doing in the public sector: the supply of materials, the prices and inflation as it is at the moment, the labour market as well, the supply of labour as well, and the 4th one is logistical issues as well, because about 60% of lorries that you see on motorways are there delivering stuff to supermarkets or delivering stuff to construction sites. So you can see, just in terms of how that has an impact, and all these things coming together, this have a major impact on us. So what we're doing across the council in many areas, many boards, for example, the Town and Community Hub Board, for example, the new supply board as well, the big construction projects, we're tracking that very, very carefully. And there is interventions that we can do. We meet with the market on a regular basis. I'll use the Town and Community Hub as an example. We have regular meetings with Hub Southwest. We're also There's other framework agreements which we can look to use at some point in the future, SCAPE, SPA, etc. We've opened up meetings with those organisations as well. We've met one of them, another one we're meeting next month. And also what we can do as well, to some extent, we can future-proof the risk of some contracts as well by trying to get in and get contracted activity in place. At the moment, there's 2 reports going to policy and strategy next week on contract awards for 2 community campuses, etc. And we are working very hard to get them all signed off before the end of this financial year, this calendar year, sorry, because what that does is that gives us quite a significant element of protection against inflation going forward. So yeah, it's fair to say that across all areas in the council, all heads of service are having to think slightly differently as to how we procure things going forward. There's various messages coming out about what's going to happen next year, whether markets are going to settle or whether it's going to continue, etc. What we are doing is we're just tracking the markets. We're just tracking the markets, etc. It depends on who you listen to be perfectly honest with you, and we just try to deal with the reality of what's actually happening at the present time.
So thank you for that. Willie, can I say to you, I think you almost answered your question when you said with your colleagues about that. There is no doubt that we don't know what it's going to be like. Well, we do know in the short term, but for the length of time, we don't know. But the team, as you've said, you've heard from James there, are working very diligently behind the scenes. Councillor Johnson, I'm not sure if you had your hand up. I think you did. Did you have a question, Councillor? No? Were you just stretching? Okay, thank you for that. I don't see any other requests in the chat bar. So we're on agenda item 9. The recommendations are on page 87. Are you happy to agree with that report? Yes, thank you very much. Agenda item 10 is the revenue monitoring report. This is a period 7 report. It's an update report. It's here for noting. It's on page 105 to 116. Kathleen Shearer.
Yep, thanks, Convener. I'm just going to take a few minutes to cover some of the key messages within the report.
Okay, Kathleen.
So this is the quarterly report, which shows the projected outturn position as at the 31st of March 2022 in respect of the overall council position, and it largely focuses on the general fund. So the report highlights the overall general fund budget is now £845.7 million after adjusting for additional monies we've received throughout the year. A surplus of £16.8 million is reported, which is a favourable movement of just under £6 million since the last report to committee. Section 2.2 highlights the main reasons for the surplus position, and as you can see from table 2, there is a £2.7 million surplus within service budgets, which is mainly due to underspends in employee costs. The majority of the surplus, just over £14 million, however, relates to funding held centrally across 2 main areas, which has been freed up, resulting in planned surpluses, with a view to using these surpluses to help manage and smooth future budget pressures. So for the first of these areas is an underspend of £7 million in financing costs. And this is summarised at paragraph 2.2.5. This is largely due to a combination of effective cash flow management, as well as additional one-off savings arising from the loan debt reprofiling exercise that we undertook last year. I would like to just remind you, though, that reprofiling exercise isn't a permanent saving, and the budget is required in future years, so these are one-off savings. In addition to that, a report to policy and strategy in September approved a reprofiling of £20 million of capital expenditure to future years of the programme. So the consequence of that is a temporary reduction in the borrowing requirement compared with budget, which is also contributing to that £7 million underspend. The second of the planned underspend is in relation to other budget assumptions, and these again are temporary, resulting in a further £7 million of underspends. Section 2.2.6 provides the details of that, and it This includes a saving in the non-domestic rates of £3 million, just under £3 million, as a result of the rates relief awarded for leisure properties for 1 year only. However, the report highlights that there is approved savings of just over £3 million in 2022-23 for active and creative communities. And given the level of the non-domestic rates underspend and the fact that an update on the revised operating model for active and creative communities will not be presented to elected members until we're well into next financial year. So the recommendation is that a one-off £2 million will be earmarked to address the likely delay in these savings. There's also a further 1.5 million saving and anticipated due to a review of the estimated active and creative communities cost pressures, which have not materialised as forecast. In addition to that, there are underspends in other budgets and funding that are not required within services which are held centrally, and there is currently no spend or commitment against these budgets. So we're releasing a £4 million underspend to the bottom line at this stage. Again, these are largely temporary budgets, but could help provide short-term solutions for future budgets or for any savings already approved, which are proven difficult to deliver. Just a further couple of points before I finish. I would like to draw your attention to section 2.4, which gives a brief update on the approved savings, which are on track to achieve 78.1% the current financial year, with the in-year shortfall of £4.3 million expected to be achieved next financial year. Section 2.5 and Appendices 3 and 4 give an update on the earmarked reserves and the forecast change management positions for your information. And paragraph 2.6.3 highlights that over £12 million has been set aside for the cost of the 21-22 pay award, and it's currently anticipated that that should be more than sufficient to cover the latest pay offer. And finally, the report advises that HRA is projecting an underspend of just short of £500,000, with adult social care also reporting an underspend of £4.3 million, and this is expected to increase as the year continues. So I appreciate there's a lot in there, Convener. There's a lot of good news with the planned surpluses, strengthening the financial sustainability of the council and providing options and flexibility to the council to manage future budget challenges. However, it is important to emphasise that the current reported underspends are largely one-off in nature. The report is here for noting, Convener.
Thank
Happy
you.
to take any questions.
Thank you, Kathleen, for that comprehensive note. I've got Councillor Castles. Tom, have you got a question?
Thanks, Chair. It's just two questions. First one is, how is the budget calculated for the free school meals? As we know, there's going to be an increase in the free school meals. Is there an anticipation of what the uptake will be, and then a presentation to the Scottish Government, and the budget is covered for that? Or is it just simply a budget is given? And the second one is just simply for some clarification on page 114, the item in the middle of the page, which is school contractual obligations. Just some clarification on what that is. Thanks.
So in terms of the free school meals, I don't have all the detail around that, but I know that all councils were asked to submit anticipated forecast costs in respect of it, both from a revenue and a capital perspective. And I understand that Scottish Government are currently reviewing all those submissions with a view to trying to understand the funding that is required for that. I see James is wanting to come in on that. James?
James, you come.
Yeah, as members will be aware, the free school meals is getting implemented in phases. A phase come in August of this year, another phase comes in January of next calendar year, and the final phase in the primary stage, and that's all the phases that are planned at the present time. That comes into play, excuse me, for August of next year. We do take reports to the Education and Families Committee on that subject, and there'll be a report that will come to the next, the first Education and Families Committee in the new calendar year, which will also be the last one. of the council's term of office at the present time. So in the last one that went to education committees, I think in August, we gave an update on where we were with rolling out in August, which was successful. We gave an update on the financial position as well. And in the next committee, we will be giving an update on, where we've got to with rollout for January, and importantly, where we're progressing for the rollout of for August of next year. In relation to revenue funding, that is fully funded, and we do get the funding allocations for that, and we have assumed take-up levels that we have in place as well. In relation to capital funding, officers of the Scottish Futures Trust and the Scottish Government are currently liaising with 32 councils as to what we consider to be our capital financial implications, and we have submitted a return on that, and we should expect to hear, hopefully within the next a month or so, as to how much of the funding will be released to each local government organisation. I would expect that may, for example, be part of the Scottish Government's budget planning as they start to look at it for the 9th of December. So we should get information coming to us very, very soon in that, but we will certainly be bringing a report to the Education and Families Committee to provide an update on that.
Thank you, James. That was very helpful for that clarification. Kathleen, the second question is on page 114 on the Change Management Fund, school contractual calculations of obligations, sorry. Can you respond to the councillor on that?
Is this on the Appendix 3, convener?
Appendix 3, halfway down, schools contractual obligations. Councillor Castles, am I correct on that? That was your question on that?
Yeah, just for clarification on what that is.
Yeah.
This is earmarked funding to support the anticipated future costs in relation to the PPP schools.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions on the chat bar. The recommendations are for noting, and they're on page 105. Are you happy to note the paper? Yes, thank you very much. Agenda item 11. Colleagues, this is basically the same budget report, only for the chief execs and the other corporate services, but it's all contained within the same detail as what Kathleen's explained there, only it goes into more specifics with the chief execs. I'm happy to take any questions from members on agenda item 11 from pages 117 to 128. Members through the chat bar. I don't see anybody coming in on agenda item 11. So the recommendations are on page 117. Are you happy to agree those recommendations, colleagues? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 12 is the capital programme. They're covered under pages 129 to 136. Greg, do you want to say a few words on this?
Yep, thanks again, convener. So this report highlights the performance of the Council's capital programmes up to the 15th of October. For the General Fund capital programme, we're only reporting a minor underspend at the moment, and that's within Business Solutions, and that reflects the time taken to complete procurement processes. The remainder of the capital programme is currently projected to break even, and that's reflective of the decision at the Policy and Strategy Committee in September, as Kathleen mentioned earlier, to reprofile the capital programme in response to the impacts of both COVID and Brexit. Those impacts will have an impact on our creating delivery challenges in relation to labour and material shortages for external contractors. But it's worth highlighting that those risks haven't diminished, and as I've highlighted in paragraph 2.2.5, the capital programme continues to face ongoing delivery challenges, and these will continue to be monitored by the Strategic Capital Delivery Group on a regular basis. In fact, that group meets again in the next couple of weeks to discuss this and the impact it will have on the Council's finances and the capital programme delivery. For the Housing Revenue Account capital programme, these same programme challenges have been experienced, and that's been reported through the Housing and Regeneration Committee throughout the year. And at the moment, we're projecting an in-year underspend of £11 million. The Housing and Regeneration Committee will consider a reprofiling exercise as part of the the process to set the HRA capital programme's 2022-23 capital programme in February next year. And other than that, there's no real other update. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. We're on agenda item 12, colleagues. I'm looking in the chat bar and there's no one has made a request. So I'm looking for the recommendations on page 129 to note the report. Are you happy to do that, colleagues? Yes, thank you very much. Agenda item 13 is the Treasury Management Report, pages 137 to 144, is for noting. Colleagues, I'm looking for any questions from the floor about agenda item 13. Any member have any questions on that one? Chat bar is empty, so I'm assuming that there's no questions. Can we agree the recommendations on page 137? Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Agenda item 14 is the North Lanarkshire Property Performance Indicator Report, pages 145 to 162. Ian Martin.
Yes, thank you, Convener. This report provides committee with a 6-monthly update in relation to the performance of North Lanarkshire properties. Section 2.2 within the report refers to the performance indicators for the period from 16th of January to the 2nd of August 2021. It's noted that section 2.4 that a total of 26 properties were let, renewed or assigned, and there were 14 lease terminations over the corresponding period, this has been supported through the creation of 2 dedicated sales liaison officers, and the benefits of creating these posts are already been realised. Sections 2.5 to 2.9 details are provided of the service highlights and notes progress with the creation of 14 modern starter business units at Orbison Street in Motherwell. I'm pleased to report that the construction of these units is now basically being completed, and North Lanarkshire Properties are now working towards securing tenants for the units. The refurbishment of the building at Buchanan Street and Hallcraig Street, Airdrie, and the property at Graham Street, Airdrie, demonstrates the work that the company is undertaking in support of the council's town centre regeneration plans. And again, these 2 projects are fairly advanced, with Graham Street and Airdrie due for completion this week, and Buchanan Street and Hallcraig Street is due for completion early next year. Section 4.1 of the report provides details of financial arrangements in relation to North Lanarkshire properties. Paragraphs 4.16 to 4.18, you'll note that the sale of premises at Hagmill Road and Napier Place are reflecting the financial position of the organisation, and the receipts from these sales will be reinvested in the portfolio as part of the company's investment plans. At 4.1.11, it is noted that based on the financial performance to the 23rd of July 2021 and anticipated COVID-19 impact, a projected transfer out of reserves of 0.613 million is reported to the 31st of March 2022. This is a favourable movement of 0.509 million against a budget of 1.122 million. Barclays Bank has consented to relax the covenant from 1.1 to 0.5 to 1 up to the 30th of September 2022, at which point it will be further reviewed. It is noted that projected within the report that a debt service covenant ratio of 0.57 to 1 is projected to the 31st of March, which is in excess of the agreed ratio. A number of appendices are attached to this report, with Appendix 1 providing details of the 12 key performance indicators for North Lanarkshire properties. Appendices 2 to 6 relate to the financial arrangements for North Lanarkshire properties, and the report is for noting. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ian, for that. There's a number of positive items within the report. Councillor Hume, Jim, you have a question.
Thanks, Chair. On Appendix 2, it mentions in the 4th box down grant income of 1.8 million for the Orbison Street units. Where did that grant come from?
Ian?
That's on page 157, appendix 2.
Yes, I would need to check that with the company and come back to you on that.
That's fine, thanks.
That will be done, James.
Yeah.
Okay, from Kathleen. You got something to say?
I think it was the regeneration capital grant funding that they'd secured that money.
What we'll do is,
Convener,
James, on you come.
Can I just come in from that? Councillor Hume, that was actually part grant funded from the Scottish Government, as Kathleen has suggested, in terms of, it came from the regional, I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's a funding source. So it was part funded by the Scottish Government, and and the NLP as well. They've put some of their reserves into as well, and that creates in the investment opportunity and creates employment, etc., in the Motherwell area.
Councillor Hume, Jim, are you happy with that response, or do you want a detailed response?
I'll look into it later, Bob. Thanks.
Thanks.
I'll need to look into the RCGF, and if I've got any questions, I'll raise them after the meeting.
Yeah, what we'll do, Councillor Hume, is we will issue you with a detailed response, and then that can just help you. And if you need any more information, just come back to us.
Thanks very much.
That's exact. Kathleen's put up the proper name of it. It's Regenerational Capital Grant Fund. James, that's the way to deal with it. Thank you very much.
Could I have a brief supplementary, Bob?
Sorry, of course you can.
And very briefly, it's the first time I've seen in the reports this covenant ratio. Could I have a brief explanation of that? Is it just as you said, the reduction in interest rates? Or what exactly does it mean for the council?
Ian or James?
Again, Convener, I'm happy to come in terms of, it's part of the loan agreement which North Lanarkshire Properties has with Barclays Bank. There is a certain ratios that we need to monitor, and we need to report to the bank. It doesn't link into interest rates or whatever. It relates more to the financial health of North Lanarkshire Properties. But again, Councillor Hume, if you're okay, what we'll do is we'll cover that in the detailed response to you.
Thanks again, that's fine.
Okay, Jim, that's the way it will be dealt with. Thank you very much. We're still on agenda item 14. There's no other, I'm just checking. Nope, there's no other items in the chat bar. Can we agree the recommendations on page 145 of the report? Yes. Yep, thank you. Agenda item 15. This is a community asset transfer request. It's on page 163 to 170. This is actually a follow-up to the original CAT application. With that, Ian, do you want to say just a few words on it, just to update the group?
Yes, thanks, Convener. The report concerns the proposed lease of land and buildings at Pallislade Country Park to Pallislade Community Trust in support of the community asset transfer request. The Environment and Transportation Committee, which is a service committee for this asset, considered the report on the 20th of May 2021 and approved the recommendations from the CAT leadership group. The CAT request covers a number of assets within Pallislade Country Park, including the former visitor centre, a longhouse, a barn and shed, and will also include a number of fields, all as shown on the plans attached to the appendices. The precise boundaries may be subject to change as discussions progress with the group. The proposed lease terms are noted at section 2.2 within the report, where it's also noted that in addition to the lease, the council also intends to enter into a service delivery agreement with the group. At section 4.1, it's noted that financial impacts were considered within the report to the Environment Transportation Committee, and the proposed lease is at a discounted rate in recognition of the activities and services that will be undertaken as part of the SLA agreement. The market rents for the various assets to be leased are also detailed within this section, and the recommendations are detailed within the report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ian, for that. We're on agenda item 15. Chat bar is it's empty, so there's no comments or questions. Recommendations are on page 163. Are you happy to agree the recommendations? Yeah, okay, thank you. Agenda item 16 is a lease extension approval, a very brief report, colleagues. I think it's here for approval. I think what I'll do is I'll go straight to the members. Is there any questions that any of the members want to raise on agenda item 16? None. It is a rather straightforward paper. There's nothing in the chat bar, colleagues. So the recommendations is the approval. On page 171, there's two of them. Are you happy to agree those? Yes, thank you very much. Item 17 is here for noting. In fact, it's been a decision taken at homologation for the council insurance programme. So, colleagues, I'm looking to see if there's any questions from yourselves on agenda item 17, pages 175 to 180. I don't see any questions or comments coming through the chat bar. Can we agree the recommendations on page 175? Yes, colleagues, thank you very much. Colleagues, moving on to agenda item 18. Now, Andrew would have sent out an updated report to you. The updated report, the only change to it is in the section of the recommendations where it's actually highlighting the differential in the money cost of it, plus in section 4.1 about the financial impact of that. James, do you want to say just a few comments on it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Convener. I'll be very brief. Committee are aware that there has been an emergency closure of Allington Primary School. Just advise committee as well that the pupils and the staff at the schools they have been successfully decanted to neighbouring schools, and the transition arrangements have worked really well. And what we're doing now is we're in the process of moving things forward in relation to the remedial work that needs to be carried out to the school. So the report is just advising committee of the contract award which has been made to Procast, and you'll see in the report, for example, in sections 1.6, 1.7, and through sections 2.2 to 2.4, this has been done fully and correctly within all the procurement procedures that we have. So it now enables us to basically get moving forward with getting things resolved at the site.
Thank you, James. Thank you very much for that. The report itself is relatively straightforward, colleagues. The chat bar is empty, so I'm moving to the recommendations on page 181. Are you happy to agree those recommendations? Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 19 is contract with variations. This report here again is for noting. What I'm happy to do is if there's any questions from the members, I'll take them just now as on agenda item 19, pages 187 to 190. There's nothing in the chat bar, colleagues. So I'm taking the recommendations on page 187. Are you happy to agree those recommendations? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Contracted items, agenda item 20. Sorry, colleagues. It's on pages 191 to 194. The report here is for noting. It's contracted award below committee approval threshold, and they're there on page 194. Colleagues, is there any members get any questions on the report? Rather a straightforward report again, colleagues. If not, there's nothing in the chat bar. Moving to the recommendations on page 191. Are you happy to agree those recommendations? Yes. Yep, I'm getting a note. Colleagues, at this point, we move to not for publication. You see that in your paperwork. Andrew, can you make the necessary arrangement to take us on offline?